Hey everybody, what is going on? Welcome back to another chili side-by-side comparison video. It has been a little while, so I'm excited to jump in and check out what's been happening with these chilies and to update you what the plan is next. As I mentioned, it has been a little while in between episodes, and there's a reason for that. One is that it is now June, okay? What that means is it is winter, or moving into winter here in Australia, in Brisbane, Queensland. You can see we've got some gorgeous blue skies at the moment and some pretty amazing days. I do really love this time of year here in winter because we're getting low 20s in the middle of the day, but nice crisp mornings as well. I'll give you a few updates on the garden as well in the next video coming up as to what I've been doing, what's been planted, how things are going. But today we're jumping into our chili experiment once again. Now remember, these chilies have been decimated quite a few times by possums. In the last few months, we've been battling insane changes in weather. We've had a cyclone come through. As I said, I've got possums that are coming through and completely wiping out all of the leaves that were on there. And these chilies have bounced back time and time again, despite the fact that it is now a bit cooler. I have had them in the greenhouse, so they've been a little bit warmer than out, exposed in the elements. But it's really important to remember that these chilies have been going through a fair bit. So let's check in on them and see how they're going. Okay, so here we have our two remaining chili seedlings. And I know it doesn't look like much, but remember, these guys have been decimated and they're doing extremely well to be bouncing back regardless. So a quick rundown of what did happen so far in the experiment, and if you haven't seen, please go and check out the videos in the playlist. The full playlist will be linked in the description below, so you can see exactly how we got to this point here. But we've got our basic NPK fertilizer over this side. So we put in the most basic soil you could possibly get, and we've added the most basic fertilizer you can get, a basic NPK. Okay, I could say basic all day. And over here, we're using our #1 blend, which is our complete balanced fertilizer full of all sorts of amazing organic amendments. Now, this is a slow release fertilizer, so it does take a lot of those microbes and those beneficial organisms in the soil to actually break that down. Whereas our synthetic one over here can be very plant available quite quickly once diluted with some water. So let's have a look at the comparisons. What's going on between the two? Okay, so this is our basic NPK. Let's have a little look at this first. Now, you can see that all of this growth that's been sitting here for a while is a little bit old, a little bit twisted, and not overly happy. This could be for a few reasons, but most likely it's because the soil is not alive and it is making this more susceptible to disease and pests. We did have some aphid damage on here for quite a while, and that's caused a few of these issues. But because we got some more beneficials in the garden, we've got some ladybugs going on, it's balanced out nicely and I didn't have to use any spray. You can see though, if I lift up here, that this new growth is coming out from underneath. They're actually suckers. So these are coming out from right down the very bottom of the plant. So I'm kind of tempted to want to take off most of this old growth and leave these new fresh leaves coming up. But again, you can see a little bit of the twisting, a little bit of the not quite so healthy look going on, even though it is sending out buds for flowers and for fruit, which is quite amazing really. It's still pushing on quite a fair bit. If we check out the soil, we can peel it back a little bit and have a look. You can see that there's not much change. There's not much life going on in there. There is a little bit of fungal activity. So we're getting some of this white growth happening on the sticks here, which is really cool. It's just showing some of that mycorrhizal fungi coming in. And you can see some of these feeder roots here. These are all roots from the chili plant starting to make their way around and feed off all of what's in this soil mix, albeit not very much at all. For the most part, this isn't looking overly healthy, but remember, it is winter, so we might be able to give it a nice fresh trim back just before the spring season starts and allow it to really boost with all of this new growth. what I'm going to do is essentially let it do its thing, let it sort itself out, and show you exactly what's going to be happening when you do just leave it with a basic NPK fertilizer in a very basic soil mix. Now coming over to our number one blend, if I pull this, I've just snapped the top of it off. Let's make sure we don't put that plastic back in the pot. So this is the one blend now. We lost the hashtag. This is the one blend. That's the dangers of having plastic. It can just go brittle and then end up in your potting soil. But you can see this one is slightly healthier, okay? Slightly less of that curled over disease look. But we also don't have as much vigorous growth. So this one here, you can see sending out a little flower, which is gorgeous. That might mean that there's some fruit on the way, some chilies, even though it is cold. So this one doesn't look as bad, but as I said, there's not as much growth. We don't have this new growth sort of shooting out the sides here and down the bottom. So there's a few reasons why it might do that, but this one hasn't quite started to do that yet. Again, if we have a look at the soil, let's peel back this layer here. What can we see? More fungal growth, okay? Just down here, there's some more fungal activity going on, which is wonderful. The soil is starting to become a much nicer consistency, which is really cool. You can see it's nice and crumb-like, which is a crumb-like structure, which is what we want. It's got some humus being built in there from the microbes. So it's a much better quality than where we started with it. So let's tuck that back in. So even though we do have some wonderful update that these plants are coming back to life, we can see the difference that healthy soil makes. And what I'm going to do is take you over to show you the mother plant and the third container, which we've been working on improving the soil health a lot. So that's going to be really interesting to see, especially with the difference between these two. But we have to wait for the microbes. We have to wait for the soil life to develop inside these containers so that they can start doing the work of breaking down that fertilizer and turning it into plant available nutrients. As I said, we're probably getting a little bit more of that out of the synthetic to start with, but we're thinking about long-term soil health and feeding our microbes. So as we develop more microbe population in the number one blend pot, I think you'll start to see some of that slow release fertilizer really breaking down and feeding these in a much, much better long-term solution. So interesting update on those two first pots for now. And like I said, initially, I think the winter months aren't going to be all that productive for this kind of experiment, but we're looking long term. We're going season on season on season, and we're going to test some of these for you. I'm not going to bother with bricks or anything like that because I can tell you they're not doing so well. And that's okay. We know this already. So if we know where our problem is, if we know where our first port of call is in terms of making better soil health, then we don't need to bother too much with fluffing around with bricks levels. We just need to get our soil health to where we need it to be, and then we can work on a little bit more of the intricacies of balance and finding the right nutrient profile and all of this. This one here is our third container, or our control container that we started with. And remember, this one had no fertilizer whatsoever. So unsurprisingly, that chili clone that we started with died, because if you don't feed it, if you don't have any life in the soil or any nutrients, it's just going to be so susceptible to pest and disease, and it's going to get wiped out. And that's what happened. So we made a pact to try and improve the basic potting mix that we put in here to get it to thriving soil, to show you exactly what I would do to get it to thriving, healthy soil. And we planted actually a whole bunch of the number 2 cover crop blend, which you can see is in here and flourishing nicely. Now, it kind of has outgrown its container, which is okay, but it's time to chop and drop. We're going to take all of this wonderful organic matter, we're going to chop it, and we're going to lay it down on top of the soil. Now, my temptation is to want to plant the mother plant, which you might be able to see over my head up here as well. This is the mother plant. We'll get you a little bit closer look at the same time. This mother plant also is showing signs of that curled leaf that we were seeing in the basic NPK pot. And we've spoken about this for a while, but the container that this mother plant is in is far too small. Okay, as above, so below. Same problem that's kind of going on with this wild cover crop, it's getting too big for the container. So that means the soil biology is unable to keep up, and it's unable to feed the plant at the rate that it needs. Okay, so we're going to try and do something about that. We're going to up pot it into this bigger pot eventually. I'm tempted to show you a little bit more of the soil improving strategies before we transplant over, but we'll have a discussion about that as we go. Look how beautiful this cover crop is looking. There are so many species that are popping up through here that I can see. Everything from vetch, we've got this really tall buckwheat that's already falling over, which is crazy, but this is giving us some seeds very soon as well. It's giving us some flowers. I can see clover coming through. I can see mustard, grasses, radish, clover right down underneath as well, which is really impressive to see as well. This is exactly what we want. Now, I know you can see, look, this whole pot has been taken over by this cover crop, and my thought is, if I was to completely transport over that chili plant that we had before, the mother plant, I'm going to have to dig out a fair bit of this soil. Wait for the siren to go past. Another amazing part of living right next to the main road. So my first thought was, do I move this mother plant into here? And I think it would actually take up a fair amount of this pot already, judging by the soil displacement that might happen. So I'm thinking, before the start of spring, I'm going to chop the mother plant right back, also take the root system right back, and we're going to start a little bit from scratch, kind of shave off everywhere. And we're going to plant it right at the time when the most explosive growth is happening for our chilies. And I think it'll give it the best chance of success for later in next season. But for now, we're going to keep working on this soil health and get it to absolutely pristine health before we put that in and get it ready for spring as well. So you're going to see how I'm going to do that too. One step we've already done. We've planted all this cover crop. We've thrown in some number one blend. We've used our microbial sprays. We're using our fermented biodynamic extracts. We're using our ferments from the Legend Cam organic ferments. We're using fish hydrolysate kelp from Red Soil Organics. We're using so much to bring back the life into this soil. The roots, the exudates, all of these root systems from these different plants are sending out different communications to bring in the right microbes so that they can work together and trade resources with the roots and give the plants everything they need and give the soil microbes everything they need. So this diversity is already doing wonders. So the plan is to chop and drop, okay? There's a few different ways you can do that. You could come in with some scissors for something like this, but what I'm gonna do is mimic nature. I'm gonna pretend to be a nice big heavy cow, and I'm gonna come in and basically, look, squash down this. Now, I'm not pushing down on the soil surface. I'm not squashing the soil. We don't want to compact the soil. I'm just treading and breaking these stems because I want some of them to grow back. I'm turning some of them into mulch. I'm killing some of them, but I also want some of it to grow back through and keep continuing to grow and be a bit of a perpetual cycle. So I can come in here and basically stamp down. This is another way that you might have heard is crimping, where we're coming in and just pushing down. Oh, there's a little lizard, little skink. Look at this little guy. Can you see him? He's just hanging out on the edge of my hand there. So these guys are also good as well. You want to see them in your garden. They're coming around, eating some pests, doing some damage. So we'll move this guy across, put him somewhere else. There you go, little fella. So let's bring you in to see. Okay, so let's show you exactly what's been going on here. So here it is. All I've done is pushed down, really quite gently. Okay, you can see that I'm not going too hard and pushing down on the soil surface, but we're bringing everything inside the pot, nothing overhanging, and we're kind of just making this mulch layer. Now, what's going to happen is this sun, this gorgeous winter sun, is going to beat down on this, and it's solarizing it, which means it's going to kill off some of it. Okay, which is what we want. We're going to turn it into mulch. Some of it is going to poke back through and start growing again and continue feeding these plant roots and feeding some of the cover crop. And we're going to continue that beautiful cycle. All right, mulch layer is now crimped down and basically squashed down on top of the pot. And I want to stress to you that this is very simple. All I did was spread down some cover crop seeds. We use mycorrhizal fungi, remember, as well, because we want to inoculate those seeds and seedlings with fungus. They provide this amazing extension to the root zone, which can search far and wide through the soil to get the nutrients it needs. So we did that. We added some sprays. Okay, you can make these sprays on your own. There's plenty of good resources out there to make these sprays. Check out the podcast episode that I did with Cam from Organic Ferments. We go into some of the fermentation you can do yourself. K&F, Korean natural farming, even some of the Jadam methods as well. All of these things are amazing that you can do at home and make your own fertilizers. These are the things that are going to bring soil health back to its most optimum. And these are the things that we're doing for this final container on the chili experiment. And I think it's probably going to be a better idea just to cruise through the winter. So maybe you're not going to see a huge amount of updates, but if there isn't anything to update, then I'll show you. You can see the soil health is being built already in all of these containers at different rates and for different reasons. So it's really interesting to see the differences between these containers and to have a little bit of a side-by-side experiment as we go through the season. So that wraps up this episode. I know that there wasn't anything hugely exciting to update, but I want to document what's going on and tell you what's going on in terms of my thought processes and how we're going to bring this chili experiment forward into the next season. Because last season we did get hammered with a whole bunch of different issues, and I think that was really cool to show and really authentic because so many of us run into these issues, and I'm trying my best to keep it as fair and as even as possible and to document the differences between certain fertilizers and how we can improve our soil health. That's been a really awesome little addition, having that third control pot that we can now turn into really healthy soil and show you how I do that. So it's amazing how things work out in the garden in the end. But thank you for watching. Now, there may be a little gap, as I said, in between the next episode, but if you want, go back and watch the start of this season. Start going through and seeing how we got to this point if you haven't already. The whole series is linked in the description. But if you enjoyed it, if you found this helpful, if you want to see more from me, I would appreciate a like, a comment, or even better, subscribe to the channel. And I very much look forward to updating you on the next video, and I'll show you a little bit around the garden and what's been going out here in the front as well. So look forward to it. Thanks again for watching, and we'll see you again really soon.